You're listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Demcast podcast network. The subject of today's episode is paid leave for all, and toward the end of this episode is an urgent call to action to call your senators about the Families First Coronavirus Act, H.R. 6201. So please do that as quickly as possible, as they are scheduled to vote on this quickly. Thank you. Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Demcast family of podcasts. I am joined today by a few people for Paid Leave for All. We're going to talk some about what their organization does and some very urgent needs around that. So I'm joined by Dawn Huckelbridge, Alex Baptiste, and Carol Joyner, and I'll let them introduce themselves, get a sense for who they are and what this organization does. Dawn, do you want to start? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in Paid Leave for All.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And thanks for having us on. It's an important moment. I'm glad to talk about the campaign and also what we're all doing to try to make some movement right now on paid leave, which is important and more important than ever. So I am the director of Paid Leave for All, which is a new campaign. The formal description is we are a growing collaborative of organizations fighting together to pass comprehensive paid family and medical leave for all working people in the U.S. This is a new effort we just launched in December, but it's actually work that's been going on for a long time, obviously. So we brought together a lot of the groups that have been fighting in the states and also making the push at the national level to get a policy passed. And so some of the folks joining this call that you'll get to meet as well have been in this fight for quite a while. And a lot of organizations decided that this was a moment and we needed to come together and pool our resources and our assets and coordinate on a strategy and, really get this over the finish line. And also build something together, which is really wonderful and unique. And it's a great model. And we're also building this table constantly. We're inviting new groups in because this is something that, as we're learning now, impacts every single one of us. This isn't just about new babies or about parents. This is about the need to care for ourselves and for our loved ones. And we're all going to need to have pay time off of work to do that. And I am the director. I've kind of worked in policy and politics for many years, and this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm excited to tell you more about it, but I'll pass it to Carol and Alex.
All right. Carol, why don't you go next? Tell us just a little bit about yourself and the work that you do in this area.
Sure. And thanks for having us. Like Dawn said, we've been working on these issues for many, many years, knowing that the U.S. lacked the infrastructure to handle day-to-day issues related to time to care and paid time to care. And during a moment like this, when it's a crisis, it really comes very plain and into our view. But so I'm with the Labor Project for Working Families, and we work in partnership with Family Values at Work. We're a network of 27 state coalitions that have been deeply involved with many other partners in passing paid sick days and paid family leave around the country over probably the last 15, 16 years. And so what we've been really focused on inside of the Paid Leave for All campaign is one of the original founders of the group that developed the campaign. We've been really focused on how to really dig deep inside of our states and make sure that we're coming up with the best learnings about what policies work best to support working families in normal situations, but also in crises like these.
Excellent. And then Alex, could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing as well?
Sure, great. Well, thank you so much for having me, Kelly. As Dawn and Carol already said, that we at the National Partnership for Women and Families have been working on a campaign for paid family and medical leave for a very long time, and we're also one of the original founders of the Paid Leave for All campaign. I work at the National Partnership for Women and Families. I'm policy counsel on our economic justice team. We're an organization that's been around for about 50 years. And paid leave has become one of the cornerstones of the advocacy work that we are doing. And we've been working with a lot of outstanding coalition partners for a number of years now, trying to, as Carol said, educate and, inform people on this issue that touches everybody's life at one point or another. But we also do a tremendous amount of work around paid sick and safe days as well, which, given the current environment and the coronavirus going around, has really also come up to be visible as an issue that, or a policy that's really, really needed. So yeah, we're really excited to be here and to discuss more of what we do.
So maybe we could start by defining the terms a little bit. What, if any, laws exist right now around this at the federal level? What would paid leave mean? Who would be paying, and what's kind of the minimum that your organization would want to fight for, and then what would be sort of the more preferred outcome of all of these kind of campaigns.
One thing I thought when you said define the terms that it would be helpful to start with is the difference between sick days and paid leave and what it means. And that's something that I think there's a lot of confusion about. But of course, everyone should expand on this. But the paid sick days are for day-to-day needs, short-term things in non-pandemic situations. If you get a cold, if you need to take care of a sick kid. But then there's also a need for paid leave for longer term needs, whether it is welcoming a new child to your family, or taking care of a sick parent, or taking care of a longer term illness or injury that you face yourself. And we believe strongly that there is a need for both. As we're seeing now, that this is, maybe you need to take one day off to go get tested, but if you're diagnosed, you may need many weeks to recover. If schools are shut down for weeks or months, we're not talking about days, we're talking about the longer term need. But yeah, we are excited that there is an urgent first step in terms of legislation. And we know that there's the need to build on that in many ways and to do more. But at Paid Leave for All, we see that this is a crisis. We need a response to scale, and we need a response now. But I'm going to kick it to the others to talk more about sort of the broader policy.
I mean, what I would say is that the state of play, and first of all, Dawn, thanks for making the distinction clear between paid family and medical leave and paid sick days, because we've seen a lot of conflation around those two, and they really are not the same. So that's a really important point to make. And over the years, we've been able to, so the United States basically has no national standard for either paid sick days. We also refer to paid sick days as paid sick and safe days, with the safe part referring to people who need to take time off to address issues related to domestic violence. So paid sick days or paid sick and safe days. We have no national standard for that in this country. We also have no national standard for paid family and medical leave. So, as many people know, the United States stands alone with maybe one or two other very small countries that have no standard. Every other country has something that they can consider parental leave, paid family leave, time off to care, and infrastructure, one that they could build on in a moment like this, right? So we would have to create it. Our only infrastructure would be the FMLA, which is unpaid leave. And so what we've been able to do, because we lack leave in this country, paid leave, is to enact state laws in 8 states and the District of Columbia that cover broad pieces of the population with paid family and medical leave. These are social insurance funds that have been created, sometimes workers only, or it's citizens only. Sometimes it's both workers and businesses pay into a social insurance fund. And that allows them to then, when they need paid family and medical leave, take the time and get paid for the time off. Where paid sick and safe days is concerned, we've been able to pass, and not just Family Values at Work, clearly we have about 2,000 different organizations connected to all of this work at last count, but we've been able to pass paid sick and safe days in upwards, I believe by now, like almost 50 states, counties, and cities across the country. And so, that blankets a very small portion of the population. And what we really need is a national standard. And so for many years, we've been calling on the federal government to pass 2 bills that would address this. The Paid Family and Medical Leave Bill is called the Family Act. And that's the bill that's referenced. And basically, it's going to be the reference point inside of the recent bill that got passed in the House, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So that's the Family Act. And it's also the Healthy Families Act. It's the Paid Sick and Safe Days bill that has been introduced in the House for many years. That's also what they're going to build upon in the House. And so those two bills together, if we had them, then the entire nation would have paid family leave. They would have paid sick and safe days for the shorter term recoveries. And we wouldn't be in this, in this situation right now. I think I'll shift to Alex to talk a little bit about, those two bills if you want. If you want more detail about what the federal bills originally would look like.
Sure. So I can start off with the Healthy Families Act. So the Healthy Families Act would provide workers with paid sick and safe days. As Carol said, that we're just as passionate and powerful behind the fact that it needs to be safe days as well to account for instances of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. But basically what this bill would do would allow workers to accrue paid sick days. It'd be 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, up to 7 days of paid sick time. And this is time that workers can use in the event that they have a cold or their kid wakes up one morning with a cold and can't go into school. If they need to take their child or a family member to a doctor's appointment, it's small increments of time to basically help workers better balance the demands of work and family and family illness. The Family Act is the Paid Family and Medical Leave federal bill that would provide workers with an extended amount of time to address more serious illnesses for themselves and for their family members. So when we're talking about paid family and medical leave, we're talking about instances where people have to be out of work for an extended period of time, not just a couple hours or a day here or there. We're talking about weeks or months. It would provide 12 weeks of paid leave for a worker to address their own serious illness, to address the illness of a family member. So, if a family member is diagnosed with cancer and needs to be hospitalized or taken to a number of treatments over a course of period, this is the kind of time that a worker would be able to take in the event of that happening. And as Carol was saying, these bills have been introduced in Congress time and time again. And had they been passed, given the current situation we are in right now, I think it's very safe to say that things would be a lot better. Workers would have the time that they need if in the event that they have to be out of work. They would also be, and already be getting paid. They wouldn't be worrying about their economic stability, and there wouldn't be as much of a threat to, am I going to be able to pay rent if my place of business closes down? So we've had amazing champions in both the House and the Senate take up these bills and really work very hard to try to get them to move, with unfortunately not the results that we would have liked to have seen so far. But, I think given the current the current situation, I am hopeful that we've kind of turned a corner and that people are becoming more and more educated on just how much, this country really needs these types of policies.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that point. I'm wondering if you have any sort of sense of how much of the country even realizes that we don't have paid family leave. I know for me, when I had my first child, so 8 years ago now, it was a little bit of a shock. I knew the country didn't have paid family leave, but I thought that my employer did, and it turned out, no, I had FMLA and I could cover it with sick time and vacation time, and I was able to take 9 weeks off. But is there even widespread understanding of what the law is, or what policies could be, what difference that would make?
So I think that you hit on something really important, and that's something that as a campaign and all of our individual organizations we really want to tackle, is there's just such a lack of understanding about what even paid leave is. I remember being confused when I took it, thinking, well, I have paid leave because I have sick days and I have vacation, but that's actually not devoted paid leave. That's not family and medical leave. And, if you're having a new baby or whatever it might be, you're going to need those sick days later. You're going to need, there are distinct needs for both.
And so, it's not a vacation.
Yeah.
Right.
It is certainly not a vacation. So I think we talk a lot about breaking it down really simply to what paid leave is, what it is not. There's a lot of confusion now with other proposals that offer things like tax credits or borrowing from your retirement. And that is also not paid, nor is it leave. So I think there is a lack of understanding of what it is and why everyone needs it, and what an outlier the United States really is in terms of not offering this, and that we shouldn't be reliant on having the best boss or the best employer in the world in order to have something that has been proven time and time again to be a benefit, not just to families and workers, but to businesses and to communities as a whole, as we're seeing right now. We're all connected.
Yeah, Kelly, more to your question about, people learning that they don't have it or that it's not a national standard. We know that only 19% of workers in the U.S. actually have access to paid family leave through their employer, and only 40% have access to medical leave through their employer. And that is not everybody. We have the Family and Medical Leave Act, the FMLA, but that's unpaid leave, and it's available to fewer than 60% of workers. And many of them can't afford to take it in the first place because it's unpaid. So we're talking about millions and millions of people who either don't have access or can't take what is offered to them because they can't afford to go for 12 weeks without getting a paycheck. I think when people realize that PTO is not the same as paid family and medical leave, they're very surprised. I'm at that stage of my life where all of my friends are starting to have children, and more of them, I think, are starting to appreciate my work more than ever because they're realizing like, oh, my paid sick days aren't going to cover the amount of time that I need to be out on maternity leave, and the FMLA, I didn't realize that was unpaid. So I think people are starting to, I think we all kind of hit a threshold in our lives and in our careers where things start to change. And then it's only when you're hit with the moment where you need this leave that you recognize that you don't actually have it, which is really challenging because the need is immediate. And I think the national conversation is starting to change a little bit, and folks are starting to wonder why the U.S. is the only industrialized nation without these policies. So, we have one unpaid standard, and it's not accessible to anywhere close to anybody. And I think it's a very rude wake-up call for folks when they realize that this is a benefit that they don't have access to, that they really do need.
I'd also like to add just a little bit more on this. I remember I had my children many years ago, and I remember knowing very clearly that I had paid sick days, what I had, and when I could start using them because I was in a union. And so unions paid sick, not safe, but paid sick days are pretty standard in union collective bargaining agreements. So I feel like those covered under a union, typically most unions have bargained for that. Less so paid family and medical leave. So when I, needed to take maternity leave many years ago, I was living in a state that had temporary disability insurance, and there's 5 states that have them. And they actually built their paid leave system on top of their temporary disability insurance systems. However, when the TDI system didn't pay enough, my union had negotiated a plan where they would pay, almost your full salary on top of the TDI. So there are avenues in this country where people, walk around feeling like everyone has paid leave because they have it, or paid sick days because they have it, either because they are connected to a union or they work for a corporation that has it. And it blinds us to the fact that the majority of people don't have it. In terms of the statistics, almost 80% of low-wage earners don't have paid sick days. And so that's something for us to really think about in this moment, when that's a huge part of our service economy.
So I'd like to turn to some calls for action. And, I think we have sort of two different areas of this, right? There's the sort of immediate call to action for what we need in this moment during this crisis. But then even after this crisis passes, obviously there's a much more long-term need in this country. So what would we like our listeners to be focused on doing to help this campaign?
Yes, excellent question. I would say, again, looking right at this emergency, it is to call your senator. This bill needs to pass. It's already passed in the House. We know it can get signed into law, and every hour lost could be lives and livelihoods lost. So please do reach out to your senator, say we need to pass Families First now. And of course, there are other actions that people can take, following our organizations for action alerts. Sign on to paidleaveforall.org, follow us on social media. But more importantly, or not more importantly, I should say, equally importantly, is to stay engaged past this first step. This was one crisis. There will be more, whether they are personal or national. You will need this policy in your life, and we urge you to start following this issue and to realize how important and how urgent it is. But Alex and Carol, you may have other kind of individual calls to action as well.
Well, I think the action you cited, Dawn, is the most critical today. Once this bill gets passed in the Senate, then we really need people to pay attention. The money is probably going to flow. The funding is going to flow from the federal to the state. And we need people to pay attention to how these policies get implemented in the state and making sure that you're aware, everyone's aware of what they're entitled to. After this gets passed in the Senate, after the Families First bill gets passed, and we hope that it'll get passed today or tomorrow in the Senate, we know that there are many folks who were left out. And we need to come together and figure out how to support those individuals, because they will continue to work unless they have paid sick and safe days. We're looking at having conversations and talking to coalition partners and other advocates around how do we make sure that people are not evicted from their homes. There are some states and cities that are calling on a moratorium on housing courts, so that we're not going to have any housing court while this is going on, to make sure that no one's evicted, and we need to figure out protections of that sort. We're not dealing at all with immigrant issues. There are folks who are not coming in to be tested, even if they can find a test. They're not going to their health professionals because they're concerned about ICE, and they're also concerned about issues related to public charge. We need to suspend all of that in this moment so that everyone in this country can be comfortable being tested, or at least getting the help that they need. The disability community is a real concern right now, and making sure that their needs are met, that they have the resources, that their healthcare resources as well as their economic resources continue to flow in this moment. And many people are concerned about childcare. Frontline childcare workers, are still caring for children. They need to have the protections, but they also need to continue working so that the parents can go to work themselves. And then the last thing I would say, which should have been the first, is that we need to really protect our frontline healthcare workers in this moment. We need to make sure that that they have paid sick days, that they have paid family leave, they can get tested. And if they're sick, they can quickly recover and come back into the workforce, because we're going to need them not just for the next week or two. We're probably going to need them and an army of them for the next couple of months. So that's what I would say. It's a lot, but we are in a critical moment, and there are many steps.
I would definitely echo what Dawn was saying, especially about calling your senators. The first step is to get the Families First coronavirus package passed and signed into law. That would provide critical help to millions of people, and it needs to get done as soon as possible. Like Carol said, we're hopeful for a vote tonight or tomorrow, but folks calling their senators, expressing their support, and urging them to pass this legislation is critical right now. Past the coronavirus package work, I think the other really important thing to do is to get educated about what your benefits are and, what you may not have that you think you do, checking to see if you have paid family and medical leave and paid sick days, and then challenging anybody who's running for office on their stance on whether or not they support policies like a nationwide paid family and medical leave and a nationwide paid sick and safe days law. It's so past time for these bills to be signed into law. It's unbelievable that it's taken something like this for the issues to get the attention that they deserve. But I think, right now it's so incredibly important that, we hold our elected officials accountable and we push them to support these policies, and then, encourage them to stand true and make sure that they do the work that they have to do to get these policies enacted so that every worker has the ability to take care of themselves and their family members and not jeopardize their economic security when they're faced with the question of, do I stay home and take care of my sick kid, or do I go to work to make sure I don't lose my job and I can make sure that I pay rent this month? Those are positions that nobody should ever be put into, and it harms all of us. So, we really need to make sure that we're pushing our elected officials to represent these policies that are in the public's best interest.
I can't say that enough, Alex. I feel like there's the moment in crisis that we're in, but there's also the long-term plan that the United States needs to build this caregiving infrastructure, and we need to hold our elected officials accountable for doing that. For all of the people who will be listening to this podcast, I'd love to give the Senate phone number that they should call. Please call 202-224-3121. I'll say it again, 202-224-3121. You'll get the Senate offices. You'll put in probably your zip code, and then they'll connect you to your senator's offices. Thank you. I'm hoping folks will call.
Well, Dawn and Alex and Carol, thank you so much. I think this is a lot of really important information. As you said, it's tragic that it takes something like this for people to start paying attention, but I hope that it does cause people to start paying attention more to this issue and that we can get this immediate need taken care of, but then also we can focus on this more long-term need so that we're not in this situation again, and so that people, when they have individual crises, can manage them as well.
Thank you for doing it.
Yes,
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.